Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to thank everyone for being here today in the Red Room. I'm Larry Schwartz. I'm Secretary to Governor Cuomo. I'd like to thank all the local municipal officials that are here today to meet with Governor Cuomo to talk about his Tax-Free New York initiative that the governor announced last week to help not only New York State, but primarily upstate New York grow new businesses and new jobs. In a moment, you're going to hear from Governor Cuomo, but you're also going to hear today from Onondaga County Executive Joni Mahoney, the Mayor of Ithaca, Savante Myrick, and the Canton Supervisor Dave Button, and the Mayor of Troy, Lou Rosamilia. And now I'd like to turn it over to Governor Cuomo.
Very nice, Rosamilia. You said that very nice. You're very good with the Italian accent. Thank you all very much for taking the time to come in. I know you have hectic schedules, and I know this was relatively last minute, but I think this is a profound proposal for your communities. I think it could make a real difference. It's something that we want to bring attention to over the next few weeks, so we didn't want to waste any time. But thank you for coming in again. I'm going to run through this proposal. Some of you have seen it before. Others of you haven't. I'll go through it relatively quickly, but it's important that you get the facts on this one because it's a proposal that I think could, as I said, make a profound difference. And it's a sweeping proposal that will really change the economic dynamic of upstate New York dramatically, I believe. So it's something that I want to make sure we're talking about, and we're talking about with the right facts. The mission for the state of New York, the best thing that we can do here in Albany is to get the economy going, right? If the economy is running in upstate New York, then you're getting revenues, you're getting jobs, you can take care of your own community. And that's job one for us, is about the economy, especially at a time when the national economy is doing what this economy is doing. Anything we can do on the state side is important because it's about creating jobs. Jobs in your community, jobs that are keeping people in your community, jobs that are paying revenues. Upstate New York, however, this has been a totally different story, and it has been a different story for a very long time. You know, we talk about the upstate economy like we're rediscovering every year a problem. This is not an annual problem. This is a decades-long problem. Some communities in upstate New York, you're on the second generation that has seen economic decline. Let's not be disingenuous about the scope of the problem. This is a fundamentally negative dynamic, and it has been for a very long period of time. We're losing people, we're losing jobs, the smaller population that then remains carries an increasing burden. And that is an unsustainable equation, my friends. And that's what we're talking about in upstate New York. What we've been doing for the past 2.5 years, we had a two-step process. First, start by taking on directly the perception that you're a high-tax, anti-business state. How do you do that? Well, first of all, admit the truth, which is you are a high-tax state. And it's not a perception issue, it's a reality issue. And the way you change the perception is by changing the reality. And that's what we've been doing for 2.5 years. That's what the property tax cap was all about. Yes, it's a fiscal restraint on local government, but it said to taxpayers all across upstate New York, I get it, I get it. The increasing property taxes were killing people. The most onerous tax in the state, far and away, is the property tax. And that's what people were complaining about, and that cap addressed that directly. We cut taxes for middle-class, middle-income people, middle-income broadly defined, $0 to $40,000 to $300,000, the lowest rate in 60 years. Lowest rate in 60 years. Think about that. Not adjusted, not inflation, lowest rate of taxation in 60 years. That's what we did with the reduction. We have a 2% spending cap in the state, so we're living with a 2% cap, which is, you know better than I, if your budget's only going up 2%, it's really a net negative when you add in all the fixed costs. So limit the growth of government and do everything you can to reduce taxes, and we have and we will continue to do. Step two, what can you do affirmatively? We embarked on a very innovative, creative, regional economic development program, which you're all aware of, with the regional economic development councils, with the co-chairs, using higher ed as the engine in those regional economic development growth partnerships. That's what the REDCs have been about. That's what SUNY 2020 is all about. An investment in SUNY, a stabilization in SUNY, long-term growth for SUNY. Innovation hotspots, which we're talking about this year. New York Open for Business campaign, the business incubators, the venture capital fund, next generation job linkage, transforming the community college system into not just a generic job training system, but a specific apprenticeship program where you identify the job, you identify the company, you train for that job. That's all been building in the same direction. It's working. We're making progress. I think you feel it in your communities. We had an unemployment rate of 7.8% is the last one, lowest since 2009. I'm not going to predict the future, and I'm not going to predict continued growth, because the national economy, as you know, is herky-jerky, and we're a product of the national economy. But past 2.5 years, we've seen progress. Now we want to bring all the pieces together, and we want to bring the approach to scale. Because, as we discussed earlier, this is a major problem. It's a major long-term dynamic, and it's going to take a major approach to change that dynamic. New York is a high-tax state, and the problem is taxes, and that's why we're leaving. Just shatter that notion once and for all and destroy it and say, no, when you think of New York, think of tax-free. That's what I want you to think of when you think of New York. 100% tax-free communities that are located all across the state. Now, the tax-free New York program is built on the following facts, the following premises. Number one, you look at where the economy is growing in this state, around this nation, around this globe, the jobs are coming out of the higher education facilities. It's the new 20-something with the new application, the new chip, the new iPhone. That's where the jobs are coming from, higher education facilities all across the country. There's a positive synergy between academia and entrepreneurial activity, which didn't exist 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you were a professor and you taught, or you were a businessman. Now, there's a positive synergy between the two, and it's growing. New York has a great asset in our higher education facilities. Our public system is one of the best, and our private schools are one of the best, literally, in the country, and it's an asset that we can build on. Fact that we are generating jobs, we just can't keep them. We have the schools, and we have the talent. So we're creating the ideas that get what they call commercialized in the universities. But what happens is we lose the job. 75% within the first year leave. Why? Because it's what we talked about before. It's the high taxes, it's the anti-business. So you'll birth the job in the school, but then they move at the end of the first year. They'll go to California, they'll go to Massachusetts, they'll go to Texas, they'll go wherever they go. A financial investor will come in and pick them up and say, I don't want to leave you in New York, we're going to take you here. And that's what we have to address. It is a fact that businesses and entrepreneurial activity are attracted to lower taxed communities. The business goes, the job goes, and the population follows. And that's what we've been feeling all across upstate New York for decades. Fact, the number one reason businesses leave New York is because of our tax situation. Number one reason why we can't get businesses to come here is our tax situation. I can't tell you how many telephone conversations I've had with a business leader who, as soon as you say, come to New York, grow in New York, they go right away to that perception of taxes and anti-business. Fact, the upstate economy has had more difficulty than downstate, and it needs special attention. We are one state, and we think like one state, but we have regions within the state. And the regions have particular needs, and we have to address those particular needs also. The upstate economic dynamic is fundamentally different than what's happening downstate. Hey, upstate is shrinking. Downstate is growing with the same tax policy. So it's working downstate, it's not working upstate. And that's the reality of this situation. You look at the upstate job growth numbers, it is staggering. New York State, 11%, upstate, 5%, New York City, 16%, the rest of the country, 9%, which means upstate New York is not just trailing downstate New York, upstate New York is trailing the nation, believe it or not. And that is a staggering statistic. So if you believe these facts, what is the sweet spot for us? The target spot is entrepreneurial activity meets academia in a regional economic context, generating a tax-free environment upstate, right? Those are the pieces that you want to put together. Conclusion, promote entrepreneurship and job creation on higher ed campuses as tax-free communities and focus on the upstate economy. What's our proposal? Use our SUNY campus system as a framework for entrepreneurial tax-free communities. What do you mean by tax-free? I mean tax-free. I mean really, really tax-free. No business, no sales, no property, no franchise fee, no income tax for owners or employees for a period of 10 years. And say that to a business that stays or a business that you're trying to reach. What do you mean by community? The SUNY campus system and up to 200,000 square feet adjoining the campus system. Eligible companies are businesses that create net new jobs. This is not about a transfer of jobs. It's not about moving a job across the street. It's about new jobs, companies out of states coming in, and keeping the startup businesses that we now lose. Frankly, if we just kept the startup businesses that we create, it would be a tremendous, tremendous boon all across the state. Eligible areas, 64 SUNY campuses, 55 of which are upstate. A pool of 3 million square feet for private universities to compete, and 20 strategically located state-owned pieces of property. What does that come out to? 120 million square feet. Well, is that a lot or a little, 120 million square feet? It's more space than San Francisco and Philadelphia have combined, believe it or not. It's more than all the commercial space in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse combined. This is not a boutique, small initiative. This says fundamentally change the economic dynamic in upstate New York with a footprint that is large enough to literally change the momentum and the energy of the upstate economy. When you use the SUNY system, because of the way it was designed, 93% of the entire state lives within 15 miles of a SUNY campus, 97% within 20 miles. So what does it mean for an individual community? SUNY and the businesses that will be located on campus, SUNYs are already not paying local property taxes. The state university system is exempt. Any development that is done off campus will either be on a private piece of property that pays property taxes or would be a negotiated pilot with the local government. But those university communities would now become magnets, bringing new people and bringing new businesses and residents to the community. And what we need more than anything is more people to pay taxes. More people are paying taxes, more people are sharing the property taxes tax burden comes down. Even if this is a tax-free business, the person still goes to buy a house and there's a real estate broker who gets a commission that pays an income tax. So generate that economic activity. Just get people in, get people buying, get people increasing the population and reducing the cost on everyone else. Grow the tax base and generate the economic activity and change the dynamic of the past 30 years. That's what we're really talking about. It will supercharge the higher ed, private sector collaborations in your communities. It takes what really was a great asset for upstate New York, which was the SUNY system. If you listen to what Governor Rockefeller was saying at the time about the SUNY system and the investment in SUNY, it was the investment in upstate New York. SUNY was the great asset that this state placed in upstate New York. And this proposal literally goes back to that initial strength and invests in that initial strength for the new economic challenges. It builds on everything we've done over the past 2.5 years. It just brings it to scale, and it increases the intensity of it. But it's hotspots, it's the investment in SUNY, it's the REDCs, it's the business incubators, the venture capital fund. All those support services would remain. We just add to it the tax-free footprint, which I believe is going to be a call heard all across this country. It takes everything to a statewide scale. It is a big change for New York, but look, New York was born from big. It was born from bold. Everything we did was big and bold, otherwise we wouldn't be where we are in the first place, right? Timidity did not build the state of New York. But you put a tax-free environment together with the state of New York and what we have in the state of New York, and you say to people, you don't have to move to find an accepting tax environment. You can stay right here in New York, all the positives of New York, the history, the geography, the diversity, everything we have in New York, and it's tax-free. That combination beats any state in the nation. I'm convinced of it. And it'll be the franchise of upstate New York. That's what the proposal is all about. Two last points, and then we'll hear from our guests. One, what's the downside? What's the criticism? We're all elected officials. We always want to hear both ends of the equation. The criticism you'll hear is, well, better than tax-free areas is reduce everybody's taxes, reduce broad-based taxes across the board. I get it. Thank you very much for that suggestion. It occurred to me myself, actually. And we are doing what we can do to bring down taxes. As you saw, we've been working very hard to reduce taxes. By the way, it's the same conversation you have in your government. Reduce taxes. Okay, and what should we cut? What expenses do you want to cut? Do you want to cut education? No, 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 no. Do you want to cut Medicaid? No, 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 no. But, so it shouldn't be just no tax areas, cut taxes all across the board. We have done it. We will do it. I am committed to it. I'm aggressive about it. But in reality, to reduce state taxes 1 point costs about $6 billion, 1 point. To bring our statewide tax rate from 7% to 6%, or thereabouts, $1 billion. Even if, $6 billion. Even if you did that, we're still not competitive. 6%, 5%, we're still not competitive. And by the way, there is no way, I mean, $6 billion is a lot of money, even on the state's budget. We started every year with a deficit. So we're going to do everything we can on broad-based, but it's not going to make the kind of dramatic difference that's going to change the dynamic in upstate New York. It's not about 7 to 6 or 6 to 5 for upstate New York. It really isn't. I wish I could say to you, 1 point will make the difference for your community. 1 point will not make the difference for your community. I'm saying you go to 0, and that can make the difference for your community, because that is a totally different economic proposition. But it's not going to be about 1 point or 2 point or a little abatement here or a little tax credit here. You have to say to businesses, I want you to fundamentally rethink what you think about this community, what you think about New York, what you think about upstate New York, and I'm going to have an economic proposition for you that is so competitive that it can match any economic proposition you will get anywhere in this nation. That's what this proposal does. Second is We have about 3-4 weeks left on the legislative calendar. That is enough time to consider this, to have the discussions, and to get it passed. But, you know, they say sometimes good ideas come to die in Albany. This is an idea that fundamentally affects upstate New York. It is much more than downstate New York. We're going to have to generate the energy, and we're going to have to generate it quickly to get it passed. Because it is big, it is sweeping, but it's only about upstate New York, and we're going to have to make our case and make it forcibly to get the legislature to focus and to focus in this period of time. It is eminently doable. I've been here long enough to know when the legislature can act and when they can't act, and the difference between when they just don't want to act and when they're making excuses. This can be done this legislative session if they feel the desire to do it. And I think given the situation in upstate New York and the longevity of it and the dire nature of it, it is a proposal that is a long time overdue. Well, it doesn't affect downstate. Yes, it does in the macro, because there's only one set of books for the state of New York. And if upstate New York is not earning money and downstate New York is subsidizing upstate New York, they're going to pay one way or the other. Better we invest in upstate New York. Let's make it strong. Let's make it vibrant like it was for many, many decades, and it'll benefit the entire state. That's what this is all about. With that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Governor. Great. Now we're going to hear from County Executive Mahoney.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Governor. As the governor just said, for decades, upstate New York has watched a slow decline, and our young people have left the state. And for decades, we haven't felt upstate that we've gotten the attention from Albany that we need and frankly, that we deserve. And we're happy that state government today, led by Governor Cuomo, is more focused on rebuilding the upstate economy than ever before. Governor Cuomo's tax-free New York proposal is yet another example of his commitment to our upstate community. Lowering the state's tax burden and cutting taxes for businesses is what our state needs to grow the economy. I've been very proud in the last 2.5 years to stand with Governor Cuomo as he's lowered taxes for business and cut taxes, as he said, for the middle class. And this tax-free New York initiative is going to supercharge those efforts that he's already made. Where I live in Onondaga County, we have Onondaga Community College, SUNY Upstate Medical University, the SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry campus, as well as some world-class private institutions that can benefit from this proposal. Fewer taxes means more investment and more jobs in upstate New York, and you really can't get any better than saying no new taxes. It really, truly is a pleasure to be here with you, Governor, today to help support this bold new initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
County Executive. Thanks for being here.
Now we're going to hear from Mayor Savante Myra.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity, too, to be here. You know, I find it's no secret that New York State has among the best institutions when it comes to innovation and intellect. And I would even go one step further and say that we have the best. That is, if you're listing in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Princeton, New Jersey, right? In New Hampshire, I'm talking to you, we have the best universities in the entire country, particularly when it comes to creating opportunities, right? And if you don't believe that in Cambridge, Massachusetts, please come see me at 108 East Green Street in Ithaca, New York. I'll show you how we've built in Ithaca the lowest unemployment rate in the state at 5%, right? Because our universities have partnered with our private industries to create high-tech, particularly high-tech, spin-offs, essentially spin-offs. The work that these undergraduates, graduate students, faculty, professors do, we've worked to commercialize them. And it's no secret, I don't think it's any secret, that in the past decades, New York State hasn't been as helpful in this process as they could be. So that's why I'm very excited to hear that the governor's proposal, the New York tax-free New York proposal put forward by the governor, is going to help us keep doing what it is we like to do, which is building on our strengths here in New York. Now, you know, it's one thing to be a college town, right? And it's one thing to make money off what we call the sandwiches and the beds, right? We sell the sandwiches, we rent the bedrooms. But you have to do more as a college town if you're going to get by. We just watched, over the past 2 weeks, we had 3 graduations. Tompkins Cortland Community College, Ithaca College, and Cornell University, right in our community. As we watched as 20,000 of the brightest minds in our entire country left the area, right? They packed up their bags and they left. Now, many of them wanted to stay. They wanted to enjoy what we've built in Ithaca, but they didn't have the opportunity to do so. The companies couldn't survive there. The companies they wanted to go and work for weren't there. Working to stop that brain drain, to bring people, keep people here in New York, often where they want to be, but they can't find the opportunities to be. That's what this proposal is all about, and that's what excites me. You know, I myself had an opportunity. I grew up here in upstate New York. And 8 years ago, when I went off to college, I had a choice to make. I could either go to Cornell University or Princeton in New Jersey. Now, I decided to stay for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to stay close to my family and give back to the community that raised me. 2, I didn't get into Princeton University, right? Makes it tough. So I said, well, we'll agree to disagree. And I'll go to Cornell, and we've been beating them in hockey ever since, so I don't care too much about it. But in all seriousness, I had a different choice 4 years ago when I graduated from Cornell. Right? Then that choice wasn't made for me. You know, the opportunities were screaming from other places. And downstate, yes, but also in other states. Job opportunities to pull me out of the area. I decided to stay, and I don't think that I'm unusual. I think more folks would stay if they had the chance to. Right? I think that's what this proposal is all about. And I think if the legislature adopts this proposal, we're going to give more young people the opportunity to stay and contribute to upstate New York, and that's what excites me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Ken, Supervisor David Button.
Governor, thank you for all that you have done to boost economic development in the North Country. You know, the North Country is sort of an outlier, and you know that because you've spent a lot of time in Northern New York, and we're very appreciative of all of the time commitment that you've made to the North Country. But in Northern New York, in my county, the unemployment rate right now is a little over 10%, and so we desperately need to jumpstart economic development in the North Country. And you've launched a lot of economic development initiatives that over time will do some great things for our communities, but this new initiative is almost like rocket fuel in a community the size of Canton, New York, the size of Potsdam, with the educational institutions that we have and the number of people that we have in our community. This could very well revolutionize what we're doing up in the North Country. And we've already received inquiries. I've received phone calls from people who want to see this move forward, the kinds of businesses that are very creative, that need a special incentive to get started in Northern New York. Our geography in Northern New York has always been a disincentive to us because we're so far from the political center of New York State and the population center of New York State, but as close as we are to the Canadian border. We are hoping that we can use this as a drawing card to bring creative people to partner with our educational institutions to do great things and build the economy in Northern New York. So our proximity to Canada is a real plus. Our folks are excited about this in Northern New York. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and do what we need to push this agenda forward. So we're on the team, and we're supportive of this initiative and ready for this to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Mayor?
Governor Cuomo, thank you very much, and my fellow municipal officials for giving this opportunity to sit here and speak with the tax-free New York, what it's really about. We heard a lot of information initially, and there was a lot of questions, but I'm feeling very comfortable and very honored to be here today to speak about the governor's tax-free proposal because it's very exciting for the entire state of New York, and especially for the upstate portion. We've struggled over the years, and we've seen upstate, as the governor has said earlier, that the economy has struggled and we've fallen behind. Governor Cuomo has recognized that a bold new initiative for upstate is what we need to get back on track, and that's what we've done today. As someone who spent years here in the Capital Region teaching 38 years at Hudson Valley Community College, I've seen firsthand how higher education and can partner with private sector businesses to fuel the economy. We have TechSmart up in Malta, is one of the most exciting new projects Hudson Valley Community College has undertaken, tapping into the boom of nanotechnology and the research and the engine behind what's happening here in the Albany area. It's really a simple model. The college provides the real estate, training our students, and the industry invests in training the students to fill jobs and at the same time harnessing the students' talents. One of the things at the RPI, we have a lot going on at RPI in Troy, and we see that all this intellectual investments and assets we lose because we need to keep these young men and women in our community. And this is just one way of doing that. We've already seen the models work in the upstate in the universities. Part of New York, because the workforces and the education are second to none. In fact, the only reason businesses would choose not to come to New York, and we heard it before, is because of taxes. Well, those days are behind us, hopefully, and with the movement of the tax-free initiative, with Governor Cuomo's tax-free initiative, this will be something that will overcome. New York tax-free communities will open the floodgates to more and more partnerships driven by unprecedented economic growth in all parts of New York State. It's a bold idea. And again, when I initially heard it, I got to question this and see what the facts were about. It's been never done before. And on the scale, it's the best part we know that it can work. It worked at Hudson Valley Community College. It worked at SUNY Albany. And it can work at every SUNY campus in New York. Governor, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for helping upstate New York, and we're supporting this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here. Floor is open. Questions?
Yes. What role, if any, will local municipalities have in off-campus site selection for the developers? And will the local municipality allow to be the partner with the SUNY campus, saying we own a large piece of property?
You know, Mayor, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the city to partner directly with SUNY. We're going to start actually trying to facilitate those relationships and those partnerships, but I think it only will work, it'll work best if the locality is working hand in glove with SUNY or the private school, by the way. You know, SUNY is the framework, but there's also 3 million square feet for private universities, the Cornells of the world, et cetera. But the three partners at the table are the locality, the business entity, and the school.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Governor?
Sure.
When you talk about the 20 off-sites that are, you know, former state-owned properties, will the rules change a little bit as to what type of business can go into those sites? I'm to understand with your proposal that the business that goes onto a specific campus has to be relative to what that campus is focused on. Any thoughts on that?
We would have more flexibility there. What we're talking about with the 20 strategically located sites is sort of a miscellaneous catch-all, if you will. There are some parcels that the state owns. For example, we have former prisons that we're trying to transfer. Yeah. And it's a large piece of property, large facility. What do you do with it, you know? And it was at one time an economic engine for the community, and now it's possibly going to be a vacant building. We have transition grants that we often do with a large facility, but it's hard to attract the business there. Now, if you made that tax-free on top of everything else, it would be a different equation. So government-owned sites, but there will also be some private sites. There are some airports that are around the state where the state owns land next to the airport, which would be a perfect place to get something going. So that's what the 20 is all about. And they will be more flexible than on the definition on the campuses.
Okay, very good.
Anything else? Okay. Floor is open for questions from the press.
Governor, how will the private schools be selected?
There's a pool of 3 million square feet. The private schools can apply for square footage on the same basic parameters as the SUNY parameters, with their proposal to compete against other proposals. Whereas on the SUNY campuses, the area is eligible from day one. The private school would apply and say, here's our idea. We want to use 50,000 square feet. Here's the business. These are the jobs. This is the commitment. This is what the local government says. And we'll pick the best applications.
Is the timeline different for the SUNY campuses versus the private schools? Like, will SUNY happen first and private schools follow?
The only differential would be the time of having the actual competition for the private schools.
When do you expect that to happen?
We haven't set a time frame on the competition, but we do it quickly. There's a high degree of interest from the private schools. SUNY works well for us because, first, as a template, it is where we want to be. We want to be primarily upstate, and the SUNY template does that. It was the origination of SUNY to begin with, but there's no doubt that some of the private schools actually may have greater economic potential. Some of them have specialized in an area and they're world-class in that area. So the spin-offs may actually be easier from some private schools.
Governor, what do you make of what some businesses might say over this, that this is creating a system of winners and losers, and if you're a business that's already chosen to be here in New York, you might see a business that is now coming in, not accepting any taxes?
I would say two things, Nick. First, the winners and losers is a pejorative way of saying it, but the whole tax code by definition, treats people and businesses differently, right? We don't have a uniform system of taxation, which would be the premise for your question. Otherwise, everybody else gets taxed the same. No, they don't. It's a progressive tax code. You make more money, you pay a higher rate. Why? Because we think you should be treated differently. Within businesses, same thing. There are different rates. Also, different businesses get treated differently. We have a whole tax code that is rife with credits for some businesses, increased appreciation for other businesses, manufacturing tax credit, where manufacturing businesses get treated differently. Well, why do manufacturing businesses get treated differently? Well, we wanted to attract them to the state. We wanted to keep them, so we treat them differently. Film production tax credit. Some businesses get a film production tax credit. They get treated differently, yes, because we wanted to get those businesses to come to the state of New York. Well, there are winners and losers. Yes, welcome to the tax code in the state of New York. Welcome to the tax code for the United States of America that has winners and losers. So there are incentives that we believe are beneficial economically. Second, if I am living in upstate New York and I'm not going to be in an eligible area, I want this to happen desperately. Why? Because it's good for me. Because if more people move into my town, and there are more people who are generating economic activity, it is better for me. And it's better for the taxes I pay, and it's better for my overall community. My problem as a taxpayer in upstate New York is everybody's leaving. That's my problem. Why are my property taxes going up so high? Because people are leaving my community, and I want to change that dynamic. And if this is bringing people in, and businesses in, and people are going to restaurants, and people are buying cars, and people are buying clothes, that's a godsend to me.
Coming at the same question a different way, Governor, what if you've got an industry or a business that is already located here, and a potential competitor is going to be coming in and taking advantage of a tax-free zone? I mean, that's different. That's different than the film production tax credit, which represents an entire range of economic activity that you're trying to attract.
Yeah, I think first of all, the priority here, Casey, is going to be to keep the startups you have. So startups, by definition, there are not a lot of other startup competitors, right? By the nature of the beast. To have the situation that you present, you know, there's a business that comes in that is a large-scale manufacturing facility that is now going to compete with another manufacturing facility. You know, as I said to Nick, weigh the incentives on both businesses. It is commonplace for any business in this state to have certain benefits from the tax code, and this competitor business may have other benefits, No doubt they're going to be significant. But it is the nature of the tax code in the state of New York, and any other state for that matter.
The Harriman campus, would you consider that in concert with UAlbany? Would you consider that as one of the state-owned assets?
Yeah, I don't know, Jimmy. It's a good question. We've been talking about it, but we don't have a decision.
As a follow-up then, obviously you're going to need to introduce a bill on this. Can you update us on negotiations and what, if any, sticking points have emerged with leaders?
No sticking points yet. It's too early for sticking points. Sticking points happen really 10 days before the end of session. You don't have a sticking point because they really don't tell you anything until 10 days before the end of session. And that's when you actually, before the past week or the 10 days, everybody just smiles and nods. Nice idea. That's a nice idea. So no, there are no sticking points. Everything is a nice idea right now.
Governor, how actively do you expect the campuses to be recruiting these new businesses, or is it something of a just wait and let them come to us? Because I could imagine that depending on location or other factors, there would be some campuses that would be more attractive than others.
It's going to depend on how good they are. You know, there's a certain market phenomenon here. The mayor was asking before. You know, some local mayors, some supervisors, some county executives will be better than others at using this tool to go out and market. Some relationships will work better between the government and the SUNY system or the school president, and those areas will do better. You know, we're seeing it in the regional economic development councils, right? You can give everyone the same basic template. Some people will implement it better. And if a school is just sitting back waiting for them to come, you know, offer them tax-free and they will come, you know, build it and they will come, you know, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of square footage that is eligible. So anyone that just says, well, I'll sit back and I expect them to descend on me, I don't think that's going to happen. This is a dramatic advantage that you now have, but it is still an uphill fight to bring businesses to upstate New York. Let's not kid ourselves. There are other factors that conspire against upstate New York. We've been focusing on taxes, but there are other parts of the country that are newer. There are other parts of the country that arguably have a more attractive climate, you know. So you still have to go out there and work. And the areas that work harder will do better.
Do you expect that to be costly for the campuses or the localities in terms of the efforts of recruiting businesses?
No. No, I don't think it's about cost. I think it's about effort and creativity.
What about many campuses are located in more suburban, outside of denser populated places? You know, Albany's the classic example of the SUNY campus is uptown. There's a downtown business district. What effect do you think this might have on efforts for center cities?
Well, it depends. It depends, Jimmy. You can also have a site off campus that if you have a partnership between a mayor and a university could site an area in the downtown if they chose. So it's going to depend. It really will, there'll be a high factor on the execution and the implementation by that locality. You're going to have 55 eligible campuses. They're all across the state. Some will do a better job than others.
What happens when a business ages out of the program? Isn't there the concern or the danger that they could just pick up and move to another state after that?
Could. 10 years down the road. First of all, it's not as easy 10 years down the road to just get up and move as it was 10 months. You're losing businesses in the first year because they're more mobile. You're younger, there are fewer people in the company, it's easier to move. You've been in a community for 10 years, maybe you got married, maybe you have kids, you own a home, the kids are in school, you have friends, you're part of that community. It's not so easy to move at the end of 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, Nick, if our tax situation is that inhospitable, that a business that's been here for 10 years says, I'm leaving, well, then you have a different problem. You know, we are doing two things. You have to change the basic trajectory of the tax rate because you just can't be this inhospitable to business. And that's the long term. This is a short-term program, 10 years, but at the end of 10 years, my hope would be this state is in a fundamentally different position in terms of taxes. If you are still one of the highest tax states at the end of 10 years, yeah, you're going to have a problem then. But you're going to have a bigger problem because at the end of 10 years, if you don't do something, the trajectory for many of these communities is just straight down.
But Governor, doesn't this bring up again, once again, the Taylor Law and the Tri-Rural Amendment? Because these local governments and school districts and things, they're kind of handcuffed. They have very much difficulty in controlling their costs, which keep going up every year as a result of these laws.
Yeah, there's two sides to the equation. One is expenses, one is revenue. And what we're talking about here is get the revenue up. We talk a lot about getting the expenses down. We're talking here about getting the revenue up. A lot of these places, a lot of these communities, I don't know that you can get the expenses down without really affecting the quality of life. It's the debate that we have in this room often, you know. People say, oh, you should cut taxes. Okay, what do you want to cut in the budget? Oh, we can't cut anything. Can't cut education, can't cut this, can't cut that. Well, then how do I reduce the budget if we can't cut, right? It's that same silly circular argument. But this is talking about increasing the revenue. Increase the revenue, you don't have to cut as much. Get people coming in, get people creating jobs. That's the other way to do this.
Governor, you said the three partners at the table would be the locality, the business entity, and the campus. What role do you see the state playing from here on?
Nothing. I'm going to take the day off. It's up to them. My part is done. If they succeed, they succeed. If they fail, they fail. I think the state can help, first, for the SUNY system itself. We're going to start next week actually working with the college professors. There are different types of college professors. You know, it's sort of like there's a spectrum of reporters, spectrum of politicians. I won't comment on the spectrums, but there's a spectrum of college presidents. And academic versus entrepreneurial activity. We talk about SUNY Albany all the time, about how creative SUNY Albany has been with nanotech. SUNY Albany was probably one of the most entrepreneurial academic institutions, way ahead of their time, really way ahead of their time. We talk about nanotech now. First grant made to Professor Calleros, who was really the professor who was the entrepreneurial energy that started this whole nanotech. First grant to Professor Calleros was made by a governor named Cuomo, Mario Cuomo. And that was the first grant to Elaine Calleros, who's sort of the father of Albany nanotech. Very entrepreneurial, very creative. So you have some college presidents who are more academically oriented solely, some who are more entrepreneurial. But to be able to work with them and share stories, and these kinds of partnerships may be new for some of them. So we're going to work on that. This coordination with the Regional Economic Development Councils is very, very important. We're going to work on that. You have a tax-free zone, but we also have all those support programs that we've started, right? The hotspots, the VC fund, that all is still working in combination with this. So that all has to be assimilated.
Since you brought it up, do you think there has, of course, been a lot of speculation about whether UAlbany and the Nano campus will remain as one entity? Do you think there's a future for that institution to remain unified, or do you think its future, the nanoscale campus's future, is as a separate entity?
Casey, I haven't really studied it, to tell you the truth. I know it's an important choice, but I haven't really studied it. Did you?
Off topic?
Were any of these on topic, by the way? Yes.
The last question, but I was making a good one. Last week, were you really joking when you said shame on us about Anthony Weiner running for mayor?
Yeah, that was the context, but that's what I said. That was my comment on the mayoral race, and we'll now let them run their race, and we'll see what happens.
Governor, you said it was next to the Peace Bridge, and how did a conflict develop between you and Canada?
Yeah, I don't know that, I haven't really had much of a conversation with Canada, so I don't know. My issue is lack of progress on the Peace Bridge, which has had a Peace Bridge is a bridge between Buffalo and Canada. It is one of the, talk about economically distressed areas of the state. Western New York is one of the truly distressed parts of the state, and it has been for multiple decades, you know. Somebody had I was in Buffalo last week. Somebody said it's been a bad 50 years, all right? So the decline in Buffalo, Western New York has just been terrible for a very long period of time. And there was the possibility of a great public works around this Peace Bridge, which joins Buffalo and Canada. And the progress has been really poor on the American side. Canadian side, there's been much more progress. But on the American side, it's been very slow. At one time, they were going to build a new bridge, which would have generated all sorts of economic activity. We're building a bridge now at Tappan Zee in the mid-Hudson. And boy, on both ends of the bridge, there's all sorts of economic activity. Nothing happened, just nothing. Canada improved their plaza, no new bridge. It must have been 15, 20 years of discussion, and nothing. So that's my issue, is the lack of progress on the Peace Bridge.
You said that you do not feel that Shelley Silver should resign over his handling of Vito Lopez matter, but do you have any concerns that his status now as somebody who is in such a weakened position that he won't be able to deliver some of the items that you're looking for between now and the end of the session?
You know, I haven't seen any sign of that. I think the legislature, I see the opposite way, though. I've been talking to members of the legislature I talk to. First, they bristle a little bit that they're getting painted with a broad brush. There have been several legislators who have done really incredibly stupid, venial, or possibly criminal things. Some of the other legislators feel that they've just been painted with this broad brush, that it's all of them, which can happen. Those of us in elected office are aware of that phenomenon. But I've said, look, my solution would be have the most productive legislative session in years. You want to show the people of this state that it's not reflective of the body. Let's get to work. We have a long agenda. This proposal is going to be very important because it's sweeping in its scope. We're talking about resort destinations, casino gaming, which also has potential for upstate New York. We're talking about a Women's Equality Act that has a tremendous impact, especially on women, to a national degree, I believe. We have the first really comprehensive Women's Equality Act. We're trying to transform the Long Island Power Authority on Long Island after the storm. We're trying to do a reform package, public finance, campaign finance, ethics package. So there's a lot of work. I think the best thing for them to do is just have the greatest session, just get a lot of good work done. We make a couple of these, get a couple of these things done, you change the trajectory of the state. You pass this tax-free, you change the trajectory of the upstate New York. You really do. And I think we'll get there. With your help, I know we will get there. Thank you very much for being here today.